Bead Company, and I am going to be showing you today a necklace that I am currently making myself. So I have a princess stud earring that is very, very similar to this pattern. However, I wear them constantly. I mean, like probably 5 times a week. I have a little child and she will grab dangly earrings. And these match with everything. So if you like them kind of sitting as they are, check out the video for the princess stud earrings. What I'm going to be doing is I have 4 children and I decided to grab their birthstones. I'm showing you how to do the princess stud earrings as a mother's necklace. To do this necklace, I am using some Preciosa Chatons in birthstone colors. These are SS39 size Chatons. If you want to go bigger, you can go bigger and use 10mm crystals. You can use 12mm, 14mm, and do the same idea going bigger. But I thought it was a great idea as far as matching my princess stud earrings, yet still getting my kids' birthstones on and still having not an overpowering, dazzly crystal necklace. So for this, you will need however many Chatons you want in the SS39. Underneath this video in the date stamp that says when the video was produced, in the information there, we'll put links to these different materials if you would like to purchase some of them as well. So I have 4 children, so I have 4 of those Chatons, and I have them in their birthstone colors. I wear a lot of silver and gold, so I'm doing both silver and gold as I create my bezels for their birthstones. To create the bezels, I'm using Miyuki 15-0 seed beads in the Duracoat Galvanized silver and the Duracoat Galvanized gold color. In addition to my 15-0s and my Chatons, I have some silk cording. I didn't want it to look too done up because I think the more seed beads I add, the more formal it's going to look, and I want to be able to wear this necklace every day. So I grabbed some silk cording, and this is the Griffin silk in a size 10. It's thick enough that it'll hold up well, it'll look nice on the neck, and it almost looks like a thin leather, but will hold up better than a thin leather. And this is the Carnelian color. In addition to that, I have some knot covers, and these are 2 knot covers. I have my lobster clasp and my ring, and then I have some .006 wildfire beading thread in a gray color or a white color, depending on what crystals and what seed beads you are using. And I have 3 4mm bicones in just a gray color that I'm going to use to separate out and knot in between my crystals and kind of keep them in place for my necklace. So you may have a couple, you may want to do more, you may not want to do any at all. That's up to you. What I'm going to show you how to do is how to bezel and case in this chaton in order to make it its own individual unit and its own component, which we will then take and string with that Griffin silk into a small 15-inch necklace for my neck. You may want to do bigger or smaller depending on neck size. To get started, I want you to get that thread, and I would say also to have a needle nose pliers handy. That's going to help to flatten out the thread when you use your thread burner. The thread burner is a great tool to cut the thread off the spool as well as to burn down the edges of the thread because we are going to have knots right along the corner of one of the pieces there. So have a thread burner handy, and I want you to put about 5 feet of beading thread onto a size 12 needle. We're using 12s because we're using 15-0 seed beads. So they're tiny seed beads, and we are going through them a couple times as we do this netting. Get 5 feet on your 1 size 12 needle, and that's going to be enough to do up to 5 of these little components without having to restring the needle. Go ahead and get that thread on, and I will show you how we are going to make our little bezel and get our component ready to go. So to get started, I have my chaton here, and I have a little pile of my seed beads. I'm alternating between the gold and the silver along the top here, and I'm going to be using other colors along the bottom. What we're going to be doing is creating a base for our chaton to sit in, and then from that base we'll be adding extra beads and creating a netting. To start our base, we are going to use 4 groups of 5 of our base color. So I'm going to be using the silver, and I want to pick these up in groups of 5 just to keep track. There's 5, and I'm going to pick up 5 more, and there's 10. Then we get 15. Let those drop down and get my last 5, which will make 20. I'm then going to bring these 20 seed beads down to the end of the thread till I have about 1 inch left, just enough to hold on to and make a knot. And make a double knot. And we're making a circle out of these 20 beads. Pull that nice and tight so you don't see any extra thread exposed in that loop. From here, we're going to sew through 5 seed beads. These 5 seed beads are going to create our sides. We're going to add a seed bead of the alternate color in on the sides of each of these 5 to make corners. So I'm going to sew through my first 5 beads, bring my needle out after 5, and after those 5 seed beads there and bringing the needle out, I'm going to pick up 1 seed bead of a different color, so in this case the gold, and I'm going to sew through then the next 5 seed beads. Bring the needle out after the 5 and add another gold bead. What this does is it forms that nice tight square. That's why we're adding these after the fact and not in during the count. So you're doing this 4 times, making sure that you don't see any extra thread exposed to add these 4 gold beads in. So coming around here, I'm getting my kind of last corner turned, and then I'm going to add my last gold bead. The last gold bead is going to sit right near the knot that we did in order to create that circle. Sew through then those first 5 beads again, which sometimes it's a little difficult with that knot there, but you can move the needle around usually and get it in there. And then I want my thread and needle to come out on the corner through my first gold bead. Once you're through your first gold bead, just give a nice little tight pull, making sure that you have that nice square. Onto this square, we're going to add 7 seed beads on each side of our box here. We're going to pick up 7 15s. I'm doing these in the gold color. And after you have 7 on, sew through the next corner bead, which in this case is a gold bead. So I'm not sewing through those 5, I'm just sewing into that corner. Those 7 beads that are just going to kind of sit on the edge of that grouping of 5 on the side. Repeat this a total of 4. So continue putting those 7 along each one of the sides till you have 28 more seed beads on. And then you're sewing in, as you do this here, you're sewing into all of the corners. So it's very simple. You're adding 7 beads, sewing into the next corner bead. The reason we're doing them in an odd count, in an odd number, 7, is because we are going to want a center bead. The 4th bead that we put on each time is going to end up being our central bead. After you have the 4 sides on, go ahead and take your thread and needle through the corner bead and then out the 4th bead in the first group of 7. Give a nice tight pull, and you'll start to have a peak on that actual bezel area. From here, I'm going to switch to the silver beads, pick up 3 15s, go over to my next grouping of 7 along the side and count up 3 beads, 1, 2, 3, and sew in to the 4th bead and through. From here then, I want to go into the next bead on the next side, go into the 4th bead after adding 3 seed beads. Go over, count 1, 2, 3, grab the 4th bead, which is going to be the top bead. I'm not pulling super tight as I add these groups of 3 beads because I have not put my chaton in yet. I add my 3 beads, count over 1, 2, 3, catch on the 4th bead, and I have one more grouping of 3 to add. So I'm going to add 3 beads, 1, 2, 3, go back to that first bead that your thread is coming out of, and put your needle right through there. You can see I'm kind of pressing down with my fingernail as these beads kind of create a circle around. Giving a little bit of a pull, then I'm going to drop the chaton down in place so that the point is coming out that back square that we created. Giving a tight pull, then I'm going to push those beads right around the chaton. Take your thread and needle back around all of the groupings of 3, as well as that 4th bead, the whole way around the setting here. As I take this through then, and this one wants to be tight, you can see here's kind of an example where sometimes you get a tight bead or you sew through the thread. Back it out and try again, because chances are you can get it back through. There's probably a twist somewhere along here. And you can see I'm not super concerned yet that this chaton keeps popping out, because I just need to push it in. And once again, give a nice tight pull, and that pulls that netting in. Then the reason I'm sewing around is to tighten that up and to tighten up the thread so that I don't see any around this chaton. As I go around the chaton and into all of those corners, I'm pushing the chaton down with my finger and giving a nice tight pull. That's going to really tighten it up so that way there's no way that chaton is coming up and the bezel is nice and tight. As I finish going around and come around to the very last area, I'm going to bring my thread and needle down one of the sides of that gold V that we created. So we're coming out of that 4th bead in the V. I'm going to go back down beads 5, 6, and 7. Go through one of that gold corner bead that's next in line. Sew through then all of the baseline of those groupings of 5 seed beads in the silver color till I get to the starter thread. And then once I get to the starter thread after this next group of 5, all I'm going to do is simply tie those 2 thread ends together in a knot. So I'm not going through the corner beads, I'm just literally going through the 5 beads, the silver color, as I go around here to the end. And again, it's as simple as once you get to that corner then, you tie the thread ends together. So I had one more bead to go through. Out it pops. Take my poor bruised and blackened hands from making applesauce and canning and jarring and all kinds of stuff. Tie these knots together. And then take my handy dandy thread burner. Grab the ends with your thread burner, putting a little bit of pressure against it. Burn down so you have just that tiny little bit. And then take your burner right into those ends and burn them down flush next to the seed beads. And there you have it. So that's going to finish up the actual 4th little chaton. I already had done 3. Again, if you like them as studs, I wear them a ton as just the plain studs. Go ahead and do that. And now I'm going to get ready to add my silk thread, sewing basically these little components together with a little crystal in between each to separate them out. The first thing to do is actually take your silk off your silk card. If you already have one started, I would suggest always putting it back on the card. And if you can, put it back in the bag too so they don't get tangled and it can stay on its actual card till you're finished. You're going to take the entire thing off the card. When you get it, that needle's kind of tucked in behind the thread, so don't be alarmed. It is not, or the needle is there. I pushed my crystals off to the side. I wasn't thinking when I picked them that they are going to be a really, really tight fit on the actual size 10 thread here. So you're taking the thread off the whole thing. A lot of people like to stretch their silk cording because it does have a little bit of a give. So you may want to stretch the silk so that way it doesn't stretch as you're wearing it. You can see I'm just pulling it through. Sometimes I'll fold the card over if I know I'm going to use the whole thing and kind of pull it through the cord. Other people wet it and hang weights from it, all kinds of stuff. But I'm really not going to worry too much about that. I'm just worrying about right now kind of flattening it all out, pulling it off the card, and getting ready then to get it started. To get it started, I'm going to go to the very end of the thread, not the needle side, and tie an overhand knot. I'm leaving just a little bit of space just so I have something to hold on to. Give a nice tight pull and tie again. I'm going to go in with my pliers then and just give a nice yank on that size 10. From here, if you want to, you can go ahead and glue it. I'm not going to worry about it because that knot is tight. I'm going to cut down very close to the end of that knot. From here, grab your first knot cover. Go back and pull the cording. Go back to the needle end. Go ahead and put it through the needle end so that it's coming out the base of that loop. Push that down to the very end of the silk, and that knot is going to hide out inside of there. I'm not going to worry about closing it until I'm very, very end, but what I am going to do is knot right after that knot cover, so that way it is not going to go anywhere. I have that knot on there then, the knot cover is in place. I'll close it up and put it onto a jump ring, and then we'll attach the clasp as I finish the piece. Right now, I am going to get all my components ready to go, and I may even look for some gold 8/0 seed beads that I might slide on to some of the string to put in between, but you can keep it plain too if you want. You can also use some beadle on wire and do the same thing on wire if you want a wire look, or you can do a thin chain and have a chain look as well. So just to show you as I'm going along, I decided to kind of do a more modern look and did the gold 8/0 seed bead in between along the chain of the silk. I'm just tying a knot about every ½ inch, putting on a gold bead, dropping it down to the knot, tying another knot, pulling the cord through, and then getting that knot really close next to the gold bead and pulling. So I'm continuing that just a couple times, going in then, creating the knot. And I'm a visual person that I don't like to have a ruler handy. If you do, you can use a safety pin or some thicker gauge wire and make sure your spacing is exactly correct, kind of moving the knot along that and then pulling it out to pull the knot tightly. So I'm going to add a couple more seed beads in this knotted fashion, going on and adding a knot and then a seed bead, pulling it down along the silk cording, and then tying another knot right after. So I'm going to do this for about 6 inches, and then I'm going to start adding my actual components. So to add my first component, I am going to tie a knot, just like I've been doing. Get it about equal space and equal distance. Grabbing one of the 8/0 seed beads, putting that on the thread and needle, and then I'm going to pick up my first child here. You can do it in order, you don't have to. I'm going to take my needle and thread through the chaton right along the base here where I have one of the corners. I'm not taking it through a bead, I'm literally taking it below the bead and through one of the chatons. I don't want it to come out there, so if it comes out there, just put it back in. You're going to kind of push it to the top so it's hanging out there right in the middle of one of the chatons. Pull the thread through, shifting it down to that gold seed bead. I'm going to add another seed bead then along the end of that thread. If your thread's shorter, it goes much quicker to do. Push that down right next to it. You can see it hanging. And then tie it up. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm not going to do any spacers in between. I'm just going right into my next component, doing a knot, doing it about the same distance, about a quarter or a half an inch. Going ahead then, I'm calling this kind of the modern mother's necklace. Putting on the 8-0, doing my next child, going, oops, next child's the blue one. Go back through the back again. If I need to, you can take it out again through that front piece, kind of wiggle it below. Try a couple different sections. If it doesn't want to go with one, it'll definitely go into another. Bring it out, put it back through the other one, right here. And the nice thing is that needle is attached. Bring it out here on the other side. And then I get to do my knot on the other side and continue adding on these little components. So I just tied on my last bead, and what I'm going to do is get ready for my end. I'm going to tie another knot right at the end after the last bead here. I'm going to mirror the other side, which had a bead right before the end. Then another knot. Then after that knot, you're going to put on the wire guard, or I'm sorry, the knot cover. And when you put the knot cover on this time, you're going up through the back and out through the loop section. Bringing it the whole way down in your cording. Kind of turn your thread to the side here and turn that knot cover on the side. Tie a knot. Get that knot in as close as you can into that knot cover. Tie another knot going right over top of it / underneath it. Pretty much everything you do to one side, you're doing to the other side as well. Slowly get that knot tied. And a nice yank. Once you have that, go ahead in with your cutters and cut down the end. What I'm going to do now is take my necklace, or take my card here, take my silk, put it back on the silk so you don't forget what size it is, what color it is, and the needle doesn't get messed up. And then I'm going to take it back onto the packaging and slide it in. This is my best suggestion, again, for keeping the silk nice, knowing what size it is, keeping the needle, all of that. So that goes back in. I can use that for another project. And now I'm going to put the ends on to my actual Modern Mother's necklace here. So to put the ends on to this Modern Mother's necklace, all I'm going to be using is some jump rings. The jump rings are going to attach to a lobster clasp. You can use a smaller one, you can use a bigger one. You could use a push clasp or a spin clasp. Actually, I think I'm going to use this one. This is just a push clasp. You're going to tuck that into one end. Grab your pliers, bend that little end down into the knot cover. Grab the end of the knot cover, and it looks like I need to kind of trim that down a little bit further, so you tuck it in, and then close it up. On the other side, same thing. Go into your loop here, tuck that little flap down, and then close it up, closing up the knot inside. If you have any extra little sticking out, you can take your thread burner if you want. Burn down the end of that silk. It will, because it's silk, have a bit of a blackened look to it. So you want to make sure that it's going to disappear inside that ending. And then there you have the end. You have your components, and you can wear your fun modern mother's necklace with the birthstones inside. I'll be able to wear this. I won't have to worry about my daughter pulling on it because it is silk, and it'll match my earrings nicely without being overpoweringly super blingy. Again, if you need any of the materials for this, you can go back to the beginning of the video where we list it out, and you can also go below the video to that little show more button. From there, too, you can follow along if you want to make matching earrings on the Princess Stud video that I've done. You can also stay connected with me by subscribing to this YouTube channel. In addition to that, you can purchase from us at PotomacBeads.com. You can like us on Facebook. You can check us out on Instagram and Pinterest, as well as become a member of our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. It's a great interactive forum with people giving ideas and suggestions and really inspiring you to make and create on your own. As always, thank you so much for watching me make my brand new piece of jewelry. And if you get a chance to make one of these modern mother necklaces, have fun creating.